So I'm very happy to be here today and talk to you about digital twins in healthcare and also looking forward into how we are organizing this in the European space. Let me start by talking about something you might not have expected, but brownies. So yesterday and already this morning, we talked a lot about data. We need a lot of data. We talked also about technologies that could help generate this data, maybe even process some of the data. But we didn't talk about how we take all of these inputs and turn them into actionable knowledge. That bit, that recipe that is necessary, that was not really mentioned. We mentioned AI a few times, and I think the next speaker will go into detail there more. But there are other technologies in this in silico toolbox that can help us to make sure that we take all this data and we produce something that we can use to help the patient. Now, computer modeling and simulation has been put as a synonym for digital twins, or digital twins are used more and more as a synonym for computer modeling and simulation in very specific conditions. This is something that comes from Industry 4.0, where it was already used for quite some time. And you see here the official definition. So it's a virtual representation of a physical object or a process that engages with its physical twin through real-time back and forth dynamic interactions. Now, if you apply this to healthcare, there are a few issues. I mean, in some cases, like glycemic control in ICU, there you have enough sensor readouts and you can act dynamically and in real time on the patient. But in a lot of cases, this data is not available, this dynamic interaction is not possible or not even necessary. So when we talk about digital twins in healthcare, often we adopt a definition like this, which is very much like computer modeling and simulation for personalized medicine. So use individual-specific models for prevention, prediction, screening, diagnosis, and treatment of a disease, and also optimizing, selecting, and personalizing treatment strategies. Now, this leads to a lot of discussions because you can actually not call it a twin unless there is this back and forth between the physical and the digital object. Now, the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Technology did a large study on digital twins in a lot of different fields, not only in healthcare, and they came up with this diagram, and they do acknowledge that this back and forth is very important, but in cases, especially like healthcare, this can be through a human in the loop. So essentially, this is a physician making a decision on a patient using a personalized model. Now, what are these models like? The thing that comes to mind most often is you take all the data, the omics data that you have, you make an omics-based, database digital twin that is actually representing something that happens inside the cell of a patient. Now, there are other levels that are very important. There is the tissue level, there is the whole organ level, there is a structural level, and the whole body influences like mechanics that act on different elements than on the cell or different units than the cell. So digital twins can represent the cell, but it can also represent an organ, it can represent the whole body. Any of those can be digital twins. But not only that, you can also have twins of therapy, and what you see here is a device, an occluder device in the heart, where the modeling is used, as the arrow indicates, to see if the device was placed correctly and if there are leak flows. There is also modeling of manufacturing. In this case, this is some of the work that we do on bioreactors for cell expansion. And then there's modeling of the entire medical facility. So all of these examples represent digital twins in healthcare. The components of such a digital twin are threefold. You have the hardware component, and we talked a lot already about this yesterday. So the computing, the imaging, there is sensing that is required. There is a middleware, and then there is a software part where we actually look into how do we establish these virtual replicas of the organ or the tissue or the cell that we're interested in. And so I'll focus today on that last part, on the software part. In silico medicine, so the software part of digital twins, is not a single technology. It is a spectrum. We have a huge range of tools at our disposition, and the right tool to use really depends on the amount of knowledge that we have on our question and the amount of data that we have. So we start with a very specific question of interest, a very specific context of use, and then we look at what is the right technology to use. And this can go from black box, driven by data technologies, to, on the other hand, white box, driven by knowledge technologies, such as the models that we use to turn raw data that we get from imaging into images that we can interpret. and anything in between. Most often, we're using models that in part have to use some phenomenological approach because we don't know everything, and in part, we use the mechanisms that we have already gathered for the last 50 years in science. So, as you will, on the left-hand side, if we have enough raw substances, if we have enough eggs and flour, we could, by doing a lot of heuristics, we could derive a reasonable recipe for a brownie. On the right-hand side, we take our grandmother's recipe, and in the middle, well, essentially, we start maybe with the recipe and then add some tweaks by testing things. Now, this field of in silico medicine has matured really a lot in the last decade, and is now considered by regulatory agencies, and FDA is especially strong in this. It's considered to be a valid alternative, so a valid source of data. So digital evidence is a valid source of evidence. And not just at the beginning in the R&D cycle, but really all across the life cycle. For instance, 5 years ago already, FDA approved the first adaptation of a medical device, a pacemaker, that was approved based on an in silico clinical trial that replaced a 2-year, 250-patient trial that otherwise would have taken place. Now, this was for a very specific case and a medical device, but just to show you, this is not as far-fetched as some people might think. And of course, there is also the feedback. All of these real-world data that is collected can further optimize all of these models. What was very important there was these interactions with the regulators. There are a lot of standards already available. If you go to this collection, there are 149 standards that are related mostly to data gathering for modeling, but there were only a few standards for models. And this interaction between industry, academia, and regulators led to a first standard by the American Society of Mechanical Engineering on the verification and validation of in silico models, so the credibility assessment. And that really sparked a whole movement in the field. We wanted to put all of this together and write a white paper to talk about a good simulation practice, like we have GLP and GMP. We wanted to have a GSP. But there was so much traction that this grassroots movement turned into a really big thing. And instead of a white paper, we produced a book with contributions of all the different groups that you see here, academia, industry, regulators, HTA, and also the LC colleagues. And as we used a GCP as a basis, but every chapter was discussed and reviewed by FDA. This is really something that helped to pull the field together, but also increase the quality to make sure that what we're doing is actually reaching the patient. And we, in this case, are these organizations that represent the entire ecosystem. So on the left-hand side, that's the VPH Institute, the International Society for in silico medicine that I have the pleasure currently of chairing. And on the right-hand side is our collaboration with industry, because we need all of these actors to work together. And we also need to work with all the other stakeholders. So over the years, we've been doing a lot of work, talking to clinicians, looking at what is already there, forming a common vocabulary, trying to understand what is the best language to use to talk about these things and how to move forward. And if you then look at some of these SWOT analyses, you see trust, a word that has been used quite a lot already over the past, by the past speakers. You see it appear at different places. So there is a huge opportunity, but also means that we need to make sure that we do this right, that we put the right ways in place, that we need to provide access, that we need to provide training, and that we need to make sure how to prove this trustworthiness. We did similar work with patients, with focus groups, with patient organizations, with individual patients, where we learned to develop the right language again, to talk to them, the right tools to make them understand what in silico is, because there's one thing to talk about data, but here you're doing something. You put the data in the computer and then something comes out. So what is that thing that happens? And we learned about the social acceptance and the trust, and the difference between trustworthiness is something that we can demonstrate that there is credibility, but that doesn't mean that it is trusted by the patients themselves, and we also saw that there's a big role to play there for the clinicians that are involved. Now, this is where we are now. How do we go forward? And this is about building the virtual human twin. This is something that was actually initiated by Marco in his unit when he was in DG Connect. This was officially launched, the virtual human twin, by the colleagues in DG Connect during one of the last activities or one of the last events of the Spanish presidency in December last year as the next flagship program of DG Connect. where they actually want to bring together all the investments at the interface between health and IT to make sure that we can create these digital twins and we can show their credibility and we can make them being used and shared by the whole ecosystem. So the official definition of the virtual human twin reads very much like that of personalized or digital twins for personalized medicine, an integrated multi-scale time discipline digital representation of the whole body that can be used for patient-specific predictions all along the healthcare trajectory and also the personalization and optimization of intervention options. Now, this sounds as if we're going to create one digital twin of the entire human, and that might be an aspirational goal, but as a mechanical engineer, I want my models to actually be useful and to answer a specific question. But the integration part of it is really important. So there are already a lot of examples. And for us, the virtual human twin should be about learning from these examples and then making sure that we can share this, that we can collect all the resources, that we can help people develop twins and assess their credibility, and that we work on a federated public infrastructure that is supported by a collaborative ecosystem. So a lot of terms that also yesterday have been mentioned by many different people. Now, when I say we, I'm talking about the EDIT consortium, which is the logo that you see on the right. It's a coordination and support action where we are bringing together the ecosystem, developing the roadmap, and then build a repository already of some of these assets and propose an architecture for simulation platform. Currently, the Commission also has a tender out to actually build this simulation platform. Now, before starting to write this roadmap, we had a lot of conversations with a lot of stakeholders, for instance, industry, clinicians, about what is the value proposition of such a platform, why is it necessary, and what would they see to be used from this. So you get, depending on, of course, who you talk to, quite a range of different things that are expected: the resources, the sandbox, a benchmark, technology development, LC development, and for clinicians, really a whole range depending on whether they're close to the patient that needs to be in the clinical workflow, or it can be more on training or testing. So what does it look like for us? This should be a platform where we can go into a catalog, search for a data set or a model, access this data set or model under the indicated circumstances, but also get help in finding matches between our model and a data set, between our data set and a model that might exist, between different models, between different data sets. Make sure that we can run this on the right compute infrastructure, not just the one that we're always using, but the right one, to help orchestrate all of this, build the workflows, and then make those workflows available to other people as well, and script this and take this out so that you can, once you reach a certain stage of maturity, that you can take this out and develop this as a standalone solution that it then can make it into the clinical practice. So in order to do this, a lot of work is required, not just on the technology, and you see some things listed here: hardware, software, middleware, but also on the LC, the ethical, legal, and social issues. On the user side of things, what is required? What are different other organizations that exist already? And it's really great to see all of these different elements of the community and the ecosystem coming together. Even those that have not spoken in a long time, like the physiology-based modeling and more the systems biology modeling, now everybody's really rallying around this concept, and it's really, really gratifying to see. And then also the sustainability in terms of how can we let this be taken up, who needs to take this up, what do they need, and how can we develop all those things. And so really make sure that we are adding something to what is already available, that we are not duplicating things, but that we can add a building block to the entire toolbox that already exists. All of this was written down in the first draft of the roadmap that was all made available last year. It's a 100-page document. It's not so easy to read. We're rewriting it at the moment. But there's also a 2-page version. If you really want to have the highlight of what the virtual human twin can do, I suggest that you go to virtualhumantwins.eu, and then you can find a statement that has already been endorsed by a lot of organizations in Europe and abroad: industry, academia, patient organizations, HTA, hospitals, all across the ecosystem. So at the moment, as I mentioned, we are rewriting the roadmap. So we went through a design phase. We're currently ending the develop phase. And then we will focus for the remainder of our CSA really on the validation of this roadmap by different elements in the ecosystem, and really focus on getting our recommendations written out including all of the recommendation, all of the angles from the different elements of the ecosystem. So if you want to know more about this, you're very welcome to go to a website or join us in Amsterdam for an ecosystem meeting on digital twins in healthcare and building the European virtual human twin. Thank you very much.
We have spoken this morning and yesterday about European ecosystem, but I think it's important to stress that those European ecosystems are very linked to regional ecosystem. And I want to invite you to have a look to the BioWin booth, which is in the coffee break room, because each region has its own strategy to create public-private partnership. And I wanted to say a few words about the strategy of Wallonia, which is based on the smart specialization strategy. And in this field, in Wallonia, we have one specific domain, which is innovation for enhanced health, where we are developing at EMP new platforms. For example, we work on CAR T cells and modified genetically to fight cancer, medtech, and there is a specific area which is the link between AI and data, which is the MedResist initiative, Médecine des réseaux et des systèmes, network medicine, which is really based on the data and the use of AI, and I want to develop it with you. So just to say about this initiative, this innovation initiative, it's based on the five Belgian-speaking, French-speaking university, and for research center, you have the map here. We have a network of people working in the field, and with university hospitals, we have a nice local ecosystem, which is, of course, connected to the European ecosystem. So what is the big change? The big change is the low cost of accessibility of many kinds of data. If we look at the cost of the wide genome sequencing of a human, nowadays, it's less than $100. It was inaccessible a few years ago, but nowadays you can sequence yourself for a very low cost. You can give some of your saliva, send it to the US, to 23andMe, and you get back your DNA, and you can compute risk, polygenic risk in your DNA, and know if you are at risk for this disease or this disease. This is very low cost, and there are a lot of private activity which is emerging from there. So on the one hand, you have accessibility of very a wide range of data that you can do. You can sequence yourself, you can get protein data, you can get RNA data, and so forth and so forth. And on the other hand, the predictive power of artificial intelligence is becoming very, very impressive. So if you are doing breast cancer screening, a mammography, in the past it was always seen by a human, but now a human plus an AI system is doing far better than a human alone. So the radiologist using AI will replace the radiologist who does not use AI, because the predictive power is become very impressive thanks to the progress in deep learning. You have heard about ChatGPT. There are new technology behind that, transformer technology and so forth. I will not give a lecture about AI and about transformer, just give you some spot of the use of AI and data in practical medical case and in the link with an ecosystem involving companies. So the general landscape on what we are doing is, of course, the network medicine. So the idea is not only to gather data, but it's also to explore those data, not only with predictive modeling, but also with causal modeling. So we use the link, the network of causalities across the different layers. For example, we have some research program to understand why some people getting COVID are very sick while they are in good health and others not. Of course, if you have a lot of data and graph modeling of this, you can explore those data. We use this by using large database. A lot of you know the UK Biobank. I will show you one example where we use the UK Biobank. Of course, we need the equivalent of a UK Biobank at the European level. There are excellent biobanks in Nordic countries also, and we are locally developing our local biobank because we need to manage not only personalized care, but also global care. When you build an hospital, you build an hospital for 25 years after the building of the hospital. So if you understand the genomic and the multi-omic data of your local population, you can do a policy of your medical care on the long term. I will give you an example of the use of polygenic risk score with a European project, which is MyPeps. And I already talked to you about MedResist. So first of all, why AI? AI is really the missing link, because if you have a lot of data, you are a human in a cancer board, you have to decide which treatment for a tumor, and you get plenty of data, including the DNA transformation of the data, the plenty of data that you can get, including imaging and so forth. A human which is active to look to data can only work in a space with 5 different kinds of data. If you have more than 5 data, your brain is lost. So in this world, you need algorithms. You need AI, you need functional analysis, you need graph analysis of your data, link between the data, and you need predictive model. Otherwise, a clinical decision is not at all possible. For example, in the booth, in the coffee break, you can also have a look at the radiomics booth. There is a booth about radiomics. Those guys are working on images, but also on multi-omics data, and they are helping people to make the right decision in cancer. When you need to choose a drug for a particular cancer, they have the tools because they have the algorithms which allow to explore a full space like this one. So structural genomics. So this is appearing more and more. So the speaker from Leuven spoke about wide genome association sequencing. This is a domain. I'm an algorithmic guy, but the people are asking her more and more to explore in those studies the polygenic risk. So if you have a particular DNA, you know that some people are more at risk for that type of cancer. For example, we work in the field of Alzheimer with Bernard Hanse and with the ADNA network, and they are marker in the DNA to know whether you are at risk to develop Alzheimer or not. Is it useful to know? Probably not. You want to forget it as soon as you get informed that you are at risk to get Alzheimer. But if you are at risk to get a cancer, it's very interesting, because if you are at risk to get a bowel cancer, you will do regular colonoscopy because you know that you are at risk. So those data are known, they are easy to grab, they are not that expensive, but there is a problem. What do you want to know in your structural genome to manage your own health? This is a question which is not a pure algorithmic question, it's also involving a lot of relationship between the medical doctor and the patient. And I will, if we go to functional genomics, of course, we get back to the talk, which was very much more precise than mine, from KU Leuven, where we look for the drug discovery, we look to new biomarkers and new targets by understanding all the pathway around the system. And just to mention, and I will invite you, if you agree, my dear colleague from my sister university, we are developing some startup studio to explore the AI-based drug discovery. When you have that kind of complex system, how to determine new biomarkers and how to determine new targets, this is an ongoing work where there is a big community. You mentioned in silico medicine, for example, which is a very famous company there. We are also active in that field, and we want to develop it more and more with people like you. So I hope we can invite you in Wavre. It's not that far away from Leuven. Okay. I will just, like you, spot 3 practical projects. You choose three projects, I will choose 1. A first one is a basic research project in which we work on polygenic risk score for psychiatric diseases and more specifically on addiction to alcohol. You are in Belgium and you know that Belgian beer is very addictive, but you can drink beer without being addictive. You are at risk to be addictive to alcohol if you have a combination of factors. You have a biological substrate, a social substrate which create addiction to alcohol, and psychological. And so we decided to focus on the biological aspect. And of course, the link between the microbiota and the brain is something which is largely studied in Louvain, in the teams of the guy working there. But here we focused on biomarkers linked to the brain imaging. So we are working with a strong activity in diffusion-weighted MRI, where we are able to determine the structure of the brain, axonal density, things like that, connectivity, and so forth. And we try to combine those biomarkers with the diagnosis and with the polygenic risk scores. And so we are in the current phase where we use neuroimaging, many neuroimaging aspects with polygenic score, with diagnosis of the addiction, taking a global approach, and try to determine new biomarkers. And why is it important? Because the psychiatrist working on the abstinency of diseased people, for people with addiction, they have very different strategy if the biological substrate is not the same. So you have to adapt the abstinency program clearly on the basis of the biological profile of your patient. This is the things which are ongoing, and this is basic research, and we are publishing paper on that area. So a second work on which we are working, it's a very practical project, and this is a project which is managed by 2 startups of my lab, Eonix and Intuitim, and it's addressing the problem of breast cancer screening. So you know that the ladies above 45 have to go to breast cancer screening because it saves lives. But when you do a breast cancer screening, when you do mammography, you receive X-ray, and X-ray is not harmless. It can induce some DNA perturbation. It's a little bit dangerous, but the gain is of course obvious, and you need to go to mammography. A second issue is that when you do a mammography, 2/3 of the ladies which are positive, which are detected positive by the mammography, are in fact negative. So they are stressed, they receive a biopsy, they have to wait 1 week, 2 weeks before they get back the results. And so the amount of false positive in mammography is far too high for the comfort of the ladies. So if we have better biomarker, we should reduce the false positive and reduce the discomfort of the ladies going to breast cancer screening. And of course, if we know better the profile of the lady, maybe we can adapt the mammography and maintain a high rhythm of mammography only for the ladies who are at risk to develop a breast cancer. And this has been done by Unicancer, which is a big association in France. They have developed a European project. In this European project is myPEPS, mypeps.eu, and all the ladies here in the room, you can join the program. They've already 80,000 ladies which have gone through the program. And the idea is to ask the lady to put a little bit of salivia just to sequence the genome of the ladies, and a combination of breast density and polygenic risk score can determine with a high precision the risk of developing a cancer. The ladies at risk have a program of mammography which is adapted, and the ladies at low risk, the amount of mammography is largely decreased. There is a problem behind that. One of my colleagues went through this program. She gave her saliva to the program, and she received back a letter, "You are at high risk." Of course, it was like a punch in her face, and she said to me, I had to wait 2 weeks to accept that I'm at high risk and that I need to go more often to the program. But it's interesting. Personally, I have 3 uncles who have suffered from bowel cancer, and I don't know how much time I need to go for colonoscopy. I've done it already once, two times. It's not very comfortable. But if I had my polygenic risk score, I could manage the amount of time I will go for colonoscopy. So the last project that I want to mention is about a private project which is supported by the BioWin competitive pole of Wallonia. Don't forget to have a look at the BioWin during the coffee break, and the BioWin booth. And it's involving, it's a public-private partnership, and the idea is to say, okay, all the people nowadays are giving their saliva or their blood, they send it to the US, to 23andMe, or companies like that, and in Europe, there is no private initiative for the people who want to know more about their own gene. And so we developed this idea of Gloria, and we work on a secure vault. It's not a European vault, it's a private vault. So there is a lot of discussion. In Belgium, you can sequence yourself in a private lab. It's not possible in France. But here in Belgium, you can go, knock the door. I want to sequence my genome, and I want to know something about my genome. So the idea here is not to give the genome to everybody. It's to provide an access to the genome to the first-line general practitioner, and to give them an access which is dependent on the consent of the patient. Personally, I want to know if I am at risk for bowel cancer, but I don't want to know if I'm at risk to get Alzheimer's disease. This is something I don't want to know. Maybe some of you want to know if they are at risk of Alzheimer's. Personally, I don't want. So some diseases that you cannot care, you don't want to know it. And so we developed, and this is a work we do. So the idea is that everybody can sequence itself, put his genome in a vault, and provide a conditional access to the medical doctor. So the genome is taking a lot of place. So we are working on both compression, encryption, conditional access, and the conditional access is provided with the patient agreement. So you can get, if you are a general practitioner, you can get access to the genome only upon the agreement of the patient and upon a specific question. I want to know this question or not, and this is something on which we are pushing. So we combine different things, and we have advanced technology for compression. This is a long story. In my lab, we have done a lot of compression, but this is a specific compression which allow a conditional access. So here, and of course, it can be used as described. I wanted to finish by saying that nowadays the structures, the technology is there. The cost of sequencing somebody, the cost to get protein information, or even single cell, the cost will decrease, and I assume it will be accessible to everybody. But the key question is more about adoption and changing the structures. And that's the reason why we have this kind of cowboy project about Vault for DNA. This is a private project, a public-private project, out of the box of traditional structures. And I think it's important to have startups, spin-off projects, which explore the change of organization to get access to the care with that kind of new technology. Of course, the big system has to evolve. European regulation is very important, but on the other side, we need also spin-off project, public-private initiative, which make jumps across the current organization. And it was the last message that I wanted to push. Thank you very much.
So, as mentioned, my name is Jennifer, and I work at Research Institutes of Sweden, which is the 4th largest institute in Sweden after Fraunhofer, CEA in France, and TNO. And I also have this association with ATMB Sweden, which is an association, kind of. It has become an association, but I will come back to that. I'm here today to speak to you about the ATMP, meaning the Advanced Therapy Medicinal Products. So it's a bit different topic than we have heard before, a bit from the digital world and maybe more into the treatment parts. So today I will talk to you about the background of it. I will talk to you about what it is, how we have the obstacles that you have and the challenges with these new kind of therapies, and how we have been doing this in Sweden with the obstacles and some take-home messages. So what are ATMPs? So we can just go back quite a long time to 1869. We had the first small synthetic product discovered by chemical synthesis, and these are aspirin and paracetamol. Spinning forward a century, the first biological pharmaceutical was approved. And these are based on cells and living organisms, but they are more proteins and antibodies. And then in 2009, we had the first ATMP approved by the FDA. And these are advanced therapy medicinal products that are based on cell and genes. So an ATMP, what is it? So an ATMP is a living therapy. And ATMPs are unique as they are based on live material and that is engineered or used in a new way that provides these therapeutic effects. And what ATMPs can do is that they can achieve what previously have been considered impossible. So by having the action to instructing to kill defective cells, replacing cells or tissues, correcting the faulty DNA, or adding manipulated cells to the body, we can have the outcome of it to cure, prevent, or treat the diseases. And the ATMPs are divided up into 4 different categories. It's not me who come up with this, it's from the EMA. And they are cell therapy, gene therapy, tissue therapy, and combined product. So we have the cell therapy. And this is based on cells that are either donated or taken from their own body and manipulated. And an example of this can be the CAR-T cells that were mentioned earlier. The gene therapy are more related to the recombinant DNA treatments of the body, and it's an example of this can be the CRISPR-Cas9 gene scissor that got the Nobel Prize a couple of years back. Then we have the tissue therapy that is based on the cells and tissues that can either be bioprinting of tissues or decellularization of tissues and inserted into bodies. And then we have the combined product, which is combining one of the first one with a medicinal product. So it sounds really good, and it can become really good and should become really good. But we have the problem with the cost and also how you can administer this ATMPs. So if you go from the small molecules, it's quite mass market. It's not that high cost, and you can add it in the primary care. Whilst if we span over to the cell and gene therapies, they are at the moment for quite rare diseases. However, we think that this might change in the future. We have the cost of them, it's quite high, and it's quite complex ecosystem as we are working with the slide materials. And there are also an increased number of launches for the cell and gene therapies, as you can see here. And it's actually increasing quite much. Dealing with these launches, we need to have the ecosystem there, because ATMPs are challenging everything that we know from before, from the small molecules and from the biologics. And some examples of these are to the left. I will go into them in more detail later, or soon. But I just want to show you this quadruple helix here, what we think that is needed from the ecosystem. So we need to have the infrastructure to handling these complex manufacturing processes, because we need to be in a GMP compliant area. And we also need to work with these lye materials and transport them in the right direction, and having the right temperature, carbon monoxide and everything for them. We also need to have this quality control and assurance of them. And then we are in these regulatory hurdles that we have been speaking about. But for the ATMPs, it's not the digitalization part. We have been struggling with an old regulation, but hopefully now we have a new regulation, the SOHO regulation, that might help up a bit. And then we also have the cost and access that I described to you before. And this is, they are very expensive, and to get access to them, the companies needs to focus on the countries, or in our case, maybe Europe then, because these, they tend to focus on the US or Asia at the moment, because European are quite hard to work with and doesn't want to pay that much for these kind of treatments. We also have the infrastructural requirements, which are for mainly maybe the hospitals, because they need to work differently in the hospitals. And these, they need to have a different storage, different administration, different reviewing of the patients, how to look at the side effects and everything surrounding this whole ATMP treatment. And then we also have the doctors and the nurses. They need to know how to work with this. How can we actually be sure that they have the knowledge to work within this area? And this is coming back to the education, because they need to have the correct education for everything. And for having the correct education, we need to have the excellent research. And then we also have the ethical and societal considerations. Should we actually be able to change our genome? But in Sweden, we thought that this was very important, so we applied for a mission-driven innovation, and we got funding for this. And this is actually a mission-driven innovation is that you work towards a North Star, something that the whole environment wants to work towards. So this is, we wanted Sweden to become a leader in advanced therapies, meaning that taking the whole environment, building a consortia of 20 partners, spanning from the authorities to industry to academy and healthcare. We could build up a consortia which all wanted us to go towards this North Star. And also, having this many partners and everything together, we got actually the whole ecosystem joining, even though they weren't a partner in this. So one thing that we thought within this project was very important was to work with Sweden as a LTD and not working as smaller regions as we actually are, because together we are stronger. We aren't a big country, we're around 10 million. We have 7 university hospitals. The healthcare is publicly funded. However, we score high on innovation together with Denmark, Finland, Netherlands and Belgium. We have a strong life science sector, and we also have this collaborative network, and we want to increase our connections wider. So what we think has given up some kind of momentum in Sweden, some key elements. They are divided into 5 different parts. So we have the political decisions, we have the healthcare decision, we have the educational part, we have the funding, and then we have the communication. And I will just go through some of them. It's not everything, of course, but for the political part, Sweden in 2018 creates a government office for life science. And 1 year later, this office also writes a national life science strategy, where precision medicine, implementation of ATMPs and new therapies were mentioned. And this is also an important step because it's related to what our authorities can fund. Then we have the healthcare. And the healthcare was quite early, so they formed already in 2008 something called Voxel, and it's a network for cell and tissues for the healthcare area. Further, we also had some pioneering in the CAR-T area, where we had the first treatment outside of the US for CAR-T treatment in Uppsala. Then we quickly realized within our area that the healthcare needed to have their own single point of contacts for implementing these ATMPs. So we had four of the 7 different university hospitals opening up these ATMP centers to gather the industry, the academy, and pathing them through the healthcare system for both clinical trials and everything. And then last year we also got funding for a doctoral school within the ATMP field, which is a collaboration between 5 different universities. And we think that even though it's on a higher level, we think that this would give information down further to the ground research as well. And then we have the funding, where we have our innovation authority, Vinnova, to thank for a lot. Then we have been given funding into platforms such as Genomic Medicine Sweden, which is implementation of precision medicine and sequencing at the hospitals. We have the CAMP Science and Technology, which is more for the basic science. And then they have also given some funding to manufacturing sites in Sweden, spanning the whole line from the first pre-test bedding of your pre-GMP testing to the upscaling, where Testa Center is for the pre-GMP and pre-testing of your ATMP. We have the CCRM taking the discovered product, maybe more from the academy, into becoming a company and creating everything for them. And then we have the NorthX Bio for the upscaling of everything. And you can also see these partnerships programs, which are related to what I'm here speaking to you about now. We also realized that we needed to have something coordinating everything. So we created this ATMP Sweden, which is binding everything together. We started to arrange conferences, national conferences for ATMP. During these 5 years, we've gone from 50 people coming to 550. So we know that the ecosystem really enjoys and wants to have this also. We also have gathered all the communications in the different projects and in the fundings and what is going on around a whole ATMP system. And we try to keep everything together, like coordinating everything. So just to look back, what has happened in Sweden during the last 5 years. We have gone from 61 companies to, 91. So it's a quite increase. For the small and medium enterprises, we have increased the number of employees from 110 to 311. We have increased the number of clinical trials within Sweden. We have been put on the map. And we, at the moment, had 48 active clinical trials within the ATMP field. So some things that we think have brought us forward is that we have had this shared vision. We have been working towards the same goal, and we have been thinking nationally. We have been anchoring the decisions, not only at the base level or the top level. We have been working all the way through all of the levels and operations within the ecosystem. We also think that this communication, that we have been gaining this visibility within the ATMP field, has helped us. We have also been using this for knowledge and dissemination and how to tackle the regulations that are upcoming and sharing news and everything that is ongoing. And we also have been working with this to get this ecosystem together, creating a community. Further, we also think that we have been listening in and letting the ecosystem talk. What are the obstacles they have and what do they want to do? And we have been talking to this whole quadruple helix. We also have been working with scenario workshop, what will happen in the future, and and we have been exchanging information and knowledge between us. We have also been connecting this, all of them, cross-functionally and cross-sectorial. And we have also been working in the whole nation together and not divided us up into different smaller parts. And we have been connected to the other national structures as well. And we have been trying to get everyone together. If someone is missing, we hear of something, we try to pick that up all the time. And then we have also we have also been listening quite to the UK, what they have been doing with the catapult. We have been talking a lot to Canada with their CCRM. And right now we are working, we think that Sweden might be too small. So we have started to expand to the Nordic. So we have been doing a Nordic collaboration because we are small countries. We maybe need to send patients for treatment. We need maybe to have a price negotiations on the Nordic level instead of the Swedish level. And we have started to create this network. Just to summarize what I've been telling you, what we have been doing is that I think the key factors are that we need to collaborate and we need to listen to the whole ecosystem and working together. We need to connect to the ecosystems. The politics, the healthcare, academy, and industry are important in all steps, not just focusing on one of them. And then we should have this national thinking, or maybe even international thinking, and connecting the whole European level together, and also having this bigger funding to bind us all together. Because if we are going to succeed within this area, we need to think bigger. And I just, quickly, before I thank all of you, I want to thank the core team, because I'm not the professional in all of these things. But I have a core team, so we are 8 people working, 9 people, working really hard within this area. And these people have more knowledge into different areas as well. So thank you very much for this, for listening to me, and I hope that it has been quite understandable, at least.